Hello again. Um, I'm making this video about why JGivens is my role model and also linking it to how we as consumers, as fans, need to take the responsibility to be more real with art and artists and recognize that they are just people. The reason I have started this whole role model thing, the last video I made about Kev Jumba and now about JGivens, and there's so many more that I hope to get into, is because in a world right now where family structure is so broken and there's so much hurt in and out of the church, we seek role models. And music is a part of that. Sports is a part of that. But there's a difference between an idol and a role model. And so I tend to stay away from any kind of videos talking about artists because I see them as being opportunistic, and I see them as treating the artist as an idol rather than as a artist, a human. And it depends if you see them as a role model or not. But when they are idolized, they are a product. They are an idol. And I've never idolized JGivens, and I've never idolized most people, influential people that I have pursued meeting. I do have to tell a little bit of a story, and I'm trying to structure it in the right way and also connect it to my own life, but also being conscious and careful about people's privacy. So thank you for your patience, and I am not making this to be opportunistic. I'm making this because I feel an obligation, and kind of I just need to express this because I do think it is a really, really big problem. And so, yeah, thank you for watching. So, I met JGivens because I put together a Liberty in North Korea concert. This charity came about from me reading a biography about a man named Shin Dong-hyuk, who was born in a North Korean political prison camp. And that story changed my life, and it connects to my grandfather, who was born in Crimea during the war and escaped for his life. And I do think that issue is still relevant, and North Korea will always be a very important issue to me. Right now I'm going to focus about back to JGivens. So the concert that I made, I totally funded. I lost profit off of it, of course. I was a high school student working a part-time job to try to bring home healthy organic food. And Humble Beast was one of the most precious record labels to me because they were Christian, but they were talking about very controversial things and being very transparent, being very straightforward. And Braille, I actually grew up listening to because of my brothers, my family members. So personally, my favorite artist was JGivens, from going through all the artists, downloading all the music. And it was because the way that he, just as an artist, he is unbelievable. How he presents it and his message that he's getting across. As soon as I heard the song Cheesecake, I made it my ringtone, and I had it for as long as I had a phone with a phone number. And it's still one of my favorite songs, and it's because the lyrics are the main lyric that keeps coming back, that's even interrupting Jay, is the sentence, "I will love you anyway." And I went back and I found where that sample is from, and JGivens DJ Actuel, who I didn't know they were like a team at the time. I thought just like they worked together a lot. He chose his samples very well. He's one of my favorite DJs using quality samples. Anyway, so that to me, I Will Love You Anyway, is kind of like the voice of God in my opinion. But it's not to say that we can do whatever we want and it's justified. It's to say that we have to live in constant pursuit of God, but we also can't live with the constant guilt of all the bad things that we have done. And growing up in the church, I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes when we're honest about our sins or the things that we have done that we feel guilty about, rather than having love come from the church, there has been hate and isolation, and that's not how God works. Yes, there is justice, and yes, there is morality, and yes, there is right and wrong, but there is a stark difference between when we do wrong and we acknowledge it and we continue to do wrong, and when we do wrong and we know that it's wrong and we feel bad about it being wrong and we ask God to help guide us because we know that we're inadequate in being able to try to pursue walking in perfect love ourselves. As a human, it is impossible. So that kind of sentiment goes through all of his music, and he is one of the most honest artists I know. And I dig into art, and not just music, all forms of art. And that's why I feel so honored to have been able to not only find his art, but then actually have a human connection too. So when I was making this concert, I reached out to Humble Beast, and although I wanted to ask for JGivens, I kind of felt like, you know what, God, I'm gonna leave this in your hands. So I asked, reached out. They asked, who do you want, and who are you trying to book? And I said, this is what I'm doing. Ask the artist and see who feels called to be a part of this. And it was Jay. And I don't know how that all came about. And it really doesn't matter because I believe that was divine, and that was the point, to leave this in God's hands. So, I don't really need to get into the finances of it because that's kind of besides the point. And, well, it's not besides the point, actually. I don't need to get into the details, but I will say that though, yes, it cost me money, and I'll tell the whole story about it later, I guess, because it's kind of long, but I was relying on the church that I grew up in to be there for me in allowing me to host, and I was even part of a language group, and I thought we could do it on one of those days with that language group and just have one day where we're talking about a social issue. And that didn't go through because I was told that, well, Liberty North Korea is not a Christian organization. I should get into this, actually. I will, because it's relevant. The church denied it, the two leaders, and this has been weighing on my shoulders so much because I have pursued walking in love and pursued God, and it has been the church and it has been the Christians in my life that have been the ones not getting it. So I gave 3 months, and they didn't look into Liberty in North Korea. And then last month it was like, okay, so am I gonna be able to host it there or not? And it was like, oh, well, actually, we haven't looked into it, and sorry, so we can't go through because we haven't looked into it. So later I was told, when I also brought them to my Japanese church, that, well, we felt like you were manipulating because they're not a Christian organization. And I know, because of my interactions and speaking with Liberty in North Korea, that they're run by Christians, but what does that even matter? Liberty in North Korea helps North Korean refugees through a modern-day underground railroad get out of North Korea, get out of China, where they'll be sent back to North Korea and tortured and or killed. And that is enough reason to support what they do. And the fact that, like, I can go into it, and I don't want this to be about hate. It is about love. And actually, I've talked to those guys, and they felt bad about it. And I just feel like in that moment, they weren't listening to God. They weren't trusting in God. And who am I to say that? Who am I to say that? I don't know. But I definitely know that I was putting this in God's hands, and we need to come together and not just who's labeled as Christian. I know that the people who are running Liberty in North Korea are Christians, and not all of them, because it's not about that. It's about loving people. That's how you can show God's love to people, by actually just loving them. You don't need to proselytize. You don't need to push and put a label and all of that. Like, okay, now that's done. So JGivens arrives at the airport. Me and my mom go pick him up, and he says, "Oh, my DJ's coming a little bit later." And I was like, "Your DJ? What? I didn't know I was booking, like, both of you guys." And I was like, "Who's your DJ?" And he's like, "DJ Actual." I was like, "Oh my god, that's so awesome, cool." And so we hosted them in our house. That was a short time while my brother wasn't there, so the house was available to host. And I remember, and I'm only saying this because I'm just trying to be real. I remember smelling cigarette, and I didn't care. I thought that was fine, whatever. Like, I even grew up around, like, people smoking marijuana since grade 2. That's just how it was growing up in the Northeast in Calgary. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. And though I never touched weed until I was into my adulthood, I never thought of it as this, like, evil thing, nor did I cigarettes, even though I won't personally smoke a cigarette. I won't personally ever get an abortion, but I have a friend that did that. Am I going to hate her? Am I going to demonize her? And I was thinking, but I was also trying to be respectful of privacy and all that. And I remember thinking, when we were sitting on the steps and he was encouraging me to go to school, that I have to pursue school, and how important that was. And with my experience of school, I couldn't see that being possible. And also the fact that there was no way I could fund going to school. He has an engineering degree, and he chose to be a rapper. And, he was also trying to play the part of, now he's under Humble Beast. There was more pressure to have that standard. But I knew that school wouldn't be an option. At least not in the way that it was showing it, like in Canada. It wouldn't be an option to be a farmer, go to school here, and get good schooling about good farming, because we don't have good farming here. I mean, to go to school for. There's good local farmers, but I'm called to be in Japan, and I have now found a college there, but it's $23,000. How the hell am I going to do that? I don't know. But his encouragement helped me to keep hope that school could actually be an option, and that's led me to find that college that I have, and that direction that I have to actually go to school now. So I'm really thankful, but at the time I was just like, not everyone has to go. And I wanted to say, like, I don't care if you smoke cigarettes. I don't care if, like, all of those things don't define you. And I think that's what the church really needs to understand, that what people do that the church doesn't accept, but is not, like, what does the Bible teach? It teaches that love of money is the root of all evil, and it teaches that love is God. God is love, and pursuit of God is all that he really expects from us. But we also have been given free will. So though he wants us to be in his kingdom, that is our choice to pursue that or not. Are we going to pursue God, the narrow road, which is hard, which is tough, or are we going to choose the easy road? And in the art world, I see a lot of artists who are trying, they want to be an artist, they want to do what they want to do, but it's hard to walk with God in that world of art because there's so much control, and the consumers aren't willing to actually support their artists. After that time, and after moving my house because of abuse and being in survival mode, I wasn't able to just fork out a bunch of money like I did at that moment. And my mom even helped me out with it a bit. But the people who came, over 100 people who came to the concert, they didn't donate. They wanted to ask questions, they wanted to engage, the kids were dancing, it was great. But I couldn't stand on that stage and say, look, I financed this, and it would be much appreciated if you could help. Whatever it is, even a small amount. So later I ended up going to do door-to-door for fundraising. And this is linking back to JGivens. I do hate talking about myself, but the things are all connected. So when I went door-to-door, I was going for Doctors Without Borders, Amnesty International, and the UN Human Rights, UNHCR. I don't like the UN, but for refugees who have nowhere to go and they're in refugee camps and that's the only place for them to go, that's what UNHCR does. So I was okay with that. But MSF was one of my favorite charities that I was supporting. I guess I can't think of the word. Sorry. But what story I was talking about was how Amnesty International, or Doctors Without Borders, a charity that only keeps 4% for their admin. I don't know how many Christian organizations even keep just 4% for their admin. And yeah, doctors make money, but they're also risking their lives. And doctors who have volunteered for Doctors Without Borders have lost their lives on the front of war zones and in places that have been bombed. Yeah. Anyway, the story I talked about for Doctors Without Borders was about HIV/AIDS. So that goes to today when I saw a YouTube video that says, I already put it away. I'm going to find it because I have to read what he actually said in regards to it. It was JGivens announces HIV/AIDS. And I have talked with him not that long ago, and just on Messenger. And I don't usually, like I said, I don't usually like watching videos about artists because I think that most people are being opportunistic about it. Might not be nefarious, but you got to think about the actual artist, which is why I'm going to ask Jay if I can post this, and rather than just do it. And I'm doing this not for opportunistic reasons, but with my friend who was in the concert as well, who is Korean and a local, he was the person who took care of me when I was abused, and he ended up passing away before 30. And I realized that life is very short, and so what you leave behind matters. And so that's why I'm doing this, because I don't know how long I'm going to live. I don't know if I'm going to die tomorrow. Who knows? So this is what I'm leaving behind. And I don't care if nobody sees it during my life, because whatever, but whoever does see it, to actually consider treating artists like people and seeing them as people. Don't just use artists. I hate that. So, I knew he was talking about HIV/AIDS. I didn't want to assume that he had it. I didn't want to assume it was new. I didn't want to make any assumptions. And I also don't want to talk about someone's business. So I'm going to try to keep this part as small as possible and actually read his own words, because I think that's my point, is that actually listening to what artists have to say, I can't understand how people can consume art and not actually listen to what the people are saying. Jay has an amazing ability to not only have words that have impact and meaning and are super insightful and very relevant to the current time, and even someone who looks like me, who looks like someone who wouldn't relate to something that a black rapper from Las Vegas is rapping about, connects with. That's what music does. It connects people. So I'm gonna just read his comment on the video, because it needs to be heard more than just who read it. The support is appreciated, but I'm healthy and this isn't new. What's important isn't prayers for me, for my health. Everyone has something, and no one makes it out here alive. This isn't an announcement in order to illustrate the unfortunate and deplorable consequences of homosexuality and the curse of HIV/AIDS as a result of God's wrath. That's extremely ignorant. That's an extremely ignorant thought. It is for the general education and knowledge that there are many people living healthily and happily with HIV/AIDS. Some have families, some single, some queer, some not, some born with it, some who seroconverted in many different scenarios, like got it from many different scenarios. What helps the whole is education and not blind fear and stereotypes and misguided prayers. Misguided prayers. That is such an important point. And when I was raped last year, and the slowness of me coming out and actually talking about it a little bit, there was a lot of empty support. And I don't want that. I don't want that. Don't come to me in that time when it's convenient for you to look good and put a Facebook comment on there about how much you care. Where were you before, and where are you now? Sorry. There are resources everywhere to learn more about it, and about all that is around us. Clearly, there are parts that we see every day and never know. Just because we hear something for the first time doesn't mean that it's new information. It's only a bombshell to you. Never assume. Learn more about HIV/AIDS and support organizations that fundraise, do research, your local clinic, or do whatever. There's no point in watching and discussing another man's life if it doesn't move you to some action to actually help. It isn't praying for a stranger from afar. It is learning to shape the culture of those who come next. And there are people in these comments that are assholes, with a smiley face. Now, in a time where we talk a lot about division and unification, there's good and bad globalism. There's good and bad unity. And there's also good and bad division. And it's boiled down to the root of it. Is it from a place of love, or is it from a place of hate? Is it corporations manipulating so that they can have a larger audience and push on us and control what it is that we have options about. When you're so poor that you don't have an option, what you're able to eat because all you can afford is McDonald's, that's not true democracy. We don't live in a true democracy now in North America. We don't. We actually have to pursue knowledge, and that means listening to people's stories, not just reading books. I read a lot of books, but I also listen and want to and understand each other and artists. And all that influence actually is significant, because I can say for sure, as a fan of many artists and connecting with the community that comes around them, that it is because of the arts, the people who are in that industry, I'll call it, but who are doing it from a place of love and passion, are the reason why so many people have not committed suicide, including myself. We use it, yes, to escape. And sometimes, especially when you're young and you don't have choices about where you live or your environment, that's all you can do is escape. And the Bible is there, yeah, but God uses people, and non-Christians too. And so this is the topic that the church needs to start talking about. And my local church, who actually ended up hosting my event, and it was my first time in that church that day, they're talking about this stuff, and it makes some people feel uncomfortable and makes some people think that you're materialistic or you're idolizing. It's not idolizing if you're seeing them for who God had actually made them to be, and accepting that people are imperfect, and that is okay. So I was doing this door-to-door fundraising for Doctors Without Borders, talking about HIV/AIDS and what they have done for it, before I even knew anything about JGivens having that. And so it's kind of interesting that when you don't have an opportunistic mindset, and the people that you interact with, and the people that you value, and the people that you keep in your heart and your mind and your soul. I hardly pray, to be honest. I talk to God casually sometimes, but I try more to walk with God, live with God, pursue God. And Jay has, since finding him, has always been someone that I have kept in mind from time to time. I'm incidentally wearing his t-shirt. The video I made last time about like art is worth it, I didn't think about the fact I was wearing it. It's just there. He's just a part of my life, even if we don't talk all the time. And so with HIV/AIDS, I want to talk about something because it's relevant. Majority of people don't actually. Majority of people who have HIV/AIDS are born with it, and there was a patent on the treatment for mothers who have HIV/AIDS to be able to give birth to children and not have it pass on, because that's the number one way that people actually have it, is to be born with it and get it from their mother. So you got to break that stereotype by being aware of that and actually talking about it, because it's crucial. And for the people who weren't born with it, all the circumstances that could possibly come about for you to have that, we cannot be judgmental. You cannot assume. Never assume, like he said. Never assume. Seriously. We have to be more gracious. God called us to be that. And that means taking the time to actually ask people the questions and know who they are. And respect if they don't want to open up at that time. Or if they don't ever want to open up. Because I can say too, opening up means there's going to be people who walk away from you, even if the things that happened to you weren't your choice. I didn't choose to be raped. I didn't choose to be homeless. And those kind of things, bringing that up makes people feel uncomfortable. And I didn't talk about it for so long. And I'm okay with it now to talk about it. But it still hurts. It's still triggering. And I don't want that to be all I ever talk about. It's just kind of my season of it. So, yeah. Now I want to talk about the corporate aspect of it. So Johnson & Johnson, they're that company that makes all those baby products. And it's cheap and it's affordable, but they put a patent on that cure that would allow healthy babies to be born. And Doctors Without Borders, they went to court against them for 12 years, an organization that keeps 4% for admin. They went for 12 years lobbying against Johnson & Johnson. And finally they won. And because they won, it was possible to create HIV/AIDS treatments for people that couldn't afford the crazy cost that it was with the patent. This is a matter of life and death, and corporations are a part of that. And our purchases daily are a part of that. I have been trying to live as conscious as possible with every purchase I make, because I realize these connections and I research these connections, and the severity of them, the impact of them is huge. So all of us need to care a lot more than we do about what we say, what we buy, where we work, how we treat people, how we talk to people, the format of how we talk to people. Go face to face and talk to someone. I used to call Jay from Canada, and I remember always thinking about, I know this is costing me more money. I hope this isn't costing him more money. But sometimes I just really needed to talk to him. And not messaging that's a topic for another time, communication, but human interaction. Talking at a computer right now, I hate that. But the people who have loved me in my life, like the video I made about June from the band Hoo Hoo, who I listened to since middle school, who came and stayed in my home for 2 weeks and called me yesterday, that kind of human connection, that's important. And for me, a lot of those people are not in my city. So I'm trying to connect now with people in my city who actually care. Yeah. So part of all of this stuff that I'm doing is I made a Patreon. I'm trying to go to college. I'm also trying to survive. Trying to get into journalism. And I'm actually trying to work on asking for support. $1 a month, $2 a month, whatever. And that's not what this video is about. I'm just saying this because I'll put my Patreon below. I still don't expect anyone to actually do anything from experience. But this topic needs to be considered. People need to think about artists, not just as something to talk about to gain views. So now it's 33 minutes, and I shouldn't care about time, but I do. So I am going to leave it at that for now. Yeah. There's so much more to say, and everything's connected, so... And I, unfortunately, don't have the time to be able to... or technology to have a proper video that is organized and properly functioning and all that, but hopefully I'll get there one day. And... Jeremiah, I am always rooting for you. And it might seem like not a lot, but your voice matters so much. And I respect you so much for walking with God, being critical and analytical from your experiences of people and the church and the art industry, the music industry, and all of that, don't ever stop using your voice. I mean, when you need seasons of disconnection, that is understandable, but don't ever think that what you are saying isn't valuable. I don't think you think that, because you still are outspoken, and I think you always will be, but even stuff that you make that might not be big, like cheesecake, um, with the way the internet is now, people will find it years later, and it's still going to have an impact, and you're not going to see a lot of the impact. But the the supporters and the people in your life who really, really do care and love about you, don't forget about them, even if they're far, and even if they're gone. Okay. Yeah, have a good one.